This is gonna be a pretty technical video, just talking about the new next generation Roadster. So if you're looking for, I don't know, scenery or something else, then this is not the video for you. It'll just be a nerdy video. I couldn't get Tesla Roadster out of my mind. But anyway, so the topic here is about how the Roadster can reach 250 miles per hour or 400 kilometers per hour. And I believe that they can do this by having a single gear transmission. So there will be lots of stuff, supporting my theory. First I have to mention that I look at this website teslatap.com, which has some information about spec, like deep spec about Tesla, which you usually don't find on the regular website. I think they take some of this info from the service, maybe like the service manual or something. So I consider this info pretty reliable. But the Model S P85D and also later models after that can reach 250 kilometers per hour, 155 miles per hour, and it only uses the front motor, and the front motor is rated to about 259 horsepower. The gear ratio, well, I got to explain, but that the Tesla S and X, they have a reduction gear, which means that the motor is spinning faster, and then there's this reduction gear so that the wheels spin slower than the motor. And the Model S and X, they have this 9.73 to 1 gear ratio on the rear motor, and then you have 9.34 to 1 on the front motor. And then by doing this, having slightly different gear ratio with the front and rear, they can, shift the power between front and rear. And the P85D at high speed, it acts as a front drive, front wheel drive. So I think around, was it about 230 kilometers per hour or something? Then only the front motor runs, and the back motor is just hanging there doing nothing, just kind of like in neutral. And according to Tesla Tap, the large motor can do maximum 18,700 RPM, and the small motor is 18,200 RPM. That is like the rated maximum, but we will soon see that it doesn't run on the maximum. So let's look at this Model S again. At 250 kilometers per hour, the wheel dimension is where we base this on a 19-inch wheel. We could also do it on a 21-inch, which should give you more or less the same result. So what does these numbers mean? 245, 45, or 19. It's a nice mix of imperial and the metric system in one there. So the 245 is number of millimeters of the width of the tire. Okay. And then the 45 is the percentage of that width. That will tell you how high or thick the rubber is if you look it from the side. And then the 19 is 19-inch rim. Yeah. So if we try to add these together to find the diameter, we take the 19-inch times 2.54, which is a number of centimeters per inch, and then you have to take the 24.5 centimeters times the 0.45, and then you get on one side. But you have to have two sides. You have to count two sides. So multiply by 2, and then you get 70.31 centimeters in diameter. And then you take that and you multiply by p or pi, and then you get 2.21 meter of wheel circumference. And then you take the 250 kilometers per hour and you divide it by 3.6 to get meter per second. So that's 69.44 meter per second, all right? And then you take the 69.44 divided by 2.21 to get around 31 rotations per second. And then you have to multiply that by 60 to get RPM, rotations per minute, or revolutions per minute, at the wheels. And then, because this is the front motor, you have to multiply it with the reduction gear, which is 9.34, and then you get how fast the front motor is spinning at 250 kilometers per hour. So that is 17,600 something, which is 97% of the maximum RPM. So I'm not sure. I mean, I don't know how the torque graph looks on this motor, but I would believe that, you know, it can sustain pretty high, okay, torque up until, you know, close to the end. But then, of course, towards the end, it would drop. And then let's look at the Roadster at 400 kilometers per hour or 250 miles per hour. I look on some of my photos and footage, and the Roadster has at least the rear rear wheels. They are 325, 30, R21. And then we do the same calculation as we did before with the Model S, you know, and then you find the diameter, and then we take that one, multiply by pi, and you get the 2.29. And then 400 kilometers per hour divided by 3.6 is whooping 111 meters per second. You know, that means at 400 kilometers per hour, the Roadster is passing through 1 football field per second. That is how fast it is. So we do a little bit more calculation, and we find 48.52 rotations per second, and then that equals to 2,900 something RPM. So if we take the 7,600, which is, well, the rear, I mean, that was the front motor. Just have to guess something here, you know. To see, like, let's say if it runs at pretty high, like in the high 90% of the maximum RPM, then that should equal to about 6 to 1 gear ratio. So that means, you know, Roadster could have lower gear ratio, lower reduction gear to achieve higher top speed. But, you know, if we did this with Model S or X, it would work, but, you know, it would be less powerful. So that means, you know, everything, all this brings, I mean, boils down to torque. So if you look at the P100D, people claim, well, there's no official numbers here, but I try to dig into information. So, you know, sorry for that. I mean, my information might not be 100% correct, so there's a small disclaimer there. But according to some sources, some social media, you know, they claim that the P100D ludicrous should have about 5,800 Newton meter on the rear, and another 3,700 on the front. So that equals to about 9,500 Newton meter, which is actually pretty close to the Roadster 10,000. And if you look at the Roadster, again, we don't know what kind of motors the Roadster will have, but according to my calculations, it must, I mean, it should have, you know, the large rear motor of a Model S or X, or hopefully they develop something new, because they need some more cooling. The existing motors work great, but during high load it will overheat pretty fast, and that it's not acceptable in the Roadster. So they should have better cooling, use oil cooling in the stator or something. Yeah. But if we assume, you know, similar spec to the large rear motor, at least, the large rear motor, it can output 421 horsepower, maybe even more, but it's around there, yeah, and 600 Newton meter. And the front motor is 259 horsepower and 330 Newton meter. And if we do this calculation, and, you know, based on the gear ratio, you see that because the gear ratio on the rear wheel is like lower, you get less torque. But we have 2 of those, so that means 7,200 Newton meter, which is more torque than the P100D. Obviously, you have 2 motors, so you get more torque, even though the reduction gear is lower. And in the front, it would be about 3,000 something Newton meter, and that means that combined, we end up with about 10,000 Newton meter on the wheels, which is what, you know, Tesla's been bragging about since they introduced the Roadster. So the theory so far seems plausible, based on what I have broken it down to. But we also have to look at something else, which is at 400 kilometers per hour, how many horsepower do you actually need? And then I tried to dig into some info, and I found this one, this site, which is based on BMW 8 Series. So again, you know, we don't know any specs of how the Roadster will be. So this is just guessing from my side. It's shoot in the dark. But you can assume that the Roadster will have better aerodynamics than most other fossil cars. And that has to do with the fact that, you know, the Roadster, or EV, or you know, EVs, they don't have to have this large air intake like many of the other exotic sports car have. So you can assume lower CD value. So I guess maybe about 2 square meter of frontal area, and Model S has 0.24 CD, like drag coefficient, and let's assume that the Roadster will get 0.22. Yeah, I'm not sure whether that's realistic or not, but let's do it like a guess. And what about the weight of the Roadster? Again, shooting in the dark, we have no idea, but I'm guessing 2,000 kilos. First, I was guessing around 1,600, but then when I heard that, you know, well, the batteries will be pretty heavy, yeah, then 2,000 sounds more plausible. So it's gonna be a freaking heavy car. But on the other hand, you know, the Bugatti Veyron, for instance, is also pretty heavy. And also, I look at the tires during the launch event, unveiling, I mean, and the load index on the rear tire was 102, which equals to 850 kilos. And the front was 95, which is 710 kilos. But of course, you know, you cannot take all these numbers and add them together, and then the car be freaking heavy. But it gives you an indication of how it is, and also it tells me that yes, the car is slightly like tail back heavy, yeah. Whereas in the Model S, I think the load index in front and rear is more or less the same. Yeah, that's also why you can rotate the number. You can rotate the wheels in the front and back on S and S axis. Yeah, we have some staggered options also, but okay, that's a different topic. But let's first look at rolling resistance, because okay, I found this formula. So the force of the rolling resistance is this coefficient, this. Yeah, I'm not sure where they get the number, but it's probably just a rolling resistance on the wheels and the whole drivetrain. You know how much resistance it has. So I just use the same number they used. For all we know, it could be lower on Tesla. And then M is the mass, or the weight of the car, and then G is the Earth's gravitational acceleration, which is 9.81 meter per second. In the power 2. So if we add all this together, we get 294 Newton. All right, so far so good. That is not too high number, because the other number we'll get soon will be way higher, which is air resistance. So the force of the air resistance is the frontal area of the car in square meters, and then you have the drag coefficient. And then you also have the density of the air, which is, I don't know what number, I mean, on what temperature this is, because it will base on the temperature. So it could be maybe 20 degrees Celsius. And then V is the velocity in meter per second. And it's also, you know, powered by 2, because yes, the higher speed, way more power, like force, I mean. So the CDA, CD times area will be CDA, so we find that one first, which is 0.44, and then we take the CDA and multiply with all the other here, and we get this number, kilo per meter or something, and then we multiply that one with the velocity in the power 2, and then you get this force, the resistance, you know, air resistance, which is way higher than the previous number. And then the next equation here is the power, you know, what power is needed to keep a car at whatever speed. So that is a sum of the rolling resistance plus the air resistance, and then times velocity. So you take all these numbers, add them together, and then multiply with the velocity, and it turns out to be 422 kilowatt, and that equals to 566 horsepower before losses. So again, I don't know how accurate these numbers are. It's just like an estimation or something. This is before loss, right? And after various losses, it should be around 528 kilowatt, or over 700 horsepower after about 25% loss. So I will come back to how I found that loss or estimated that loss, because also in that example, that website I looked at, the 8 series needed way more power to keep that speed, but that was that was also before loss, and they say, at least on that website, they claim the loss to be about 17%. And why the heck is the loss in the Tesla higher? Well, I believe that fossil engines, they are slightly different than electric motors. So fossil engines has higher efficiency at higher load, and especially when you drive this freaking high speed, it will have higher load, and that is one thing. And also another thing is that these fossil cars, they already have a multi-speed transmission, and they are running it on the highest transmission, which gives them a better, they are working in a better working area, whereas the Roadster at 400 kilometers per hour might be at the edge of how optimal it is. Just like like I mentioned earlier, the P85D, when it's running at 250 kilometers per hour, it's not the best efficiency there. But still, after losses, Tesla still needs less power to keep 400 kilometers per hour, based on my estimations here. And okay, here is, I'm just gonna show you briefly. Here is my calculation of how much power the Model S needs to keep 250 kilometers per hour, 155 miles per hour, which is of course way lower because it's not that high speed. But I ended up with 144 kilowatt, and that is low. I was also puzzled by that is low, because when I look at this screenshot when I drove the P85D at 250 kilometers per hour, you see that it's not 144 kilowatt. It was drawing more like 180 kilowatt. So that leads me to believe that there is about 25% loss, heat loss, or loss somewhere. And why is this higher than the heat, the loss in fossil engine? Well, as I mentioned before, but also one thing that the fossil cars don't have is heat loss from there's not there's no heat loss in the battery pack in a fossil car. Here, when you discharge massive amounts of current or power, there will be also significant heat loss. So that's how I estimated that it should be around 25% heat loss in that one. But yeah, so why do I believe that the Roadster will have a fixed gear? Well, Tesla tried two-speed gearbox in the classic Roadster, and it was too unreliable, or it was, I don't know, it broke down or something, or there was too much torque to deal with that. So they scratched that idea, so they went for a fixed gearbox. And Model S and X also has the same thing, and also they in the dual motors, Model S and X, they also shift the power between the front and rear to either save energy and stuff, So and also in the Tesla Semi, they also have a fixed gear. I guess that it would be a 20-to-1 gear ratio, which is twice as much reduction as S or X. It turns out the Semi has, thanks to, by the way, kudos to K-Man Auto. He did a freaking awesome ninja work. He crawled under the Tesla Semi and looked at the Semi components, where meanwhile, when everyone else was trying to rub the red Roadster. But he found out that the semi has one axle has 23:1 gear ratio, and another one had 15:1 gear ratio. So that is pretty smart, Tesla, because with the different gear ratio, they can shift the power between these two to get the optimal. That means at low speed, the 23:1 will have freaking massive torque. What is that? Snow? No. Well, the 23:1 will have massive torque to just pull heavy loads, whereas the 15:1 gear ratio will be better at higher speed, maybe for better efficiency or whatever. And in the case of the Roadster, well, at low speed, well, that's the thing, because they put freaking two motors in the rear, and that means that it has more available torque, so it doesn't have to go like all crazy. If they had the same gear ratio, and then 9.28, how much is it? 973:1 on the rear, and they have two rear motors, it will have so massive torque that it would just rip, it would just spin. So I'm guessing they found out that, well, we have more than enough torque, so we can reduce the reduction gear, and then it will still be fine. But to go back to all my calculation, so I found out that, okay, so the power needed for 400 kilometers per hour is after loss is about 700 horsepower, and I believe they can achieve that. Two motors. Oh, car went to sleep. Two motors, if it's powerful enough, could output, let's say, at least 350 horsepower each. So I believe it's plausible. I mean, I believe they will go for a single gearbox. No need to have multiple gears, and they can always just do with the other ones, shift the power between the front and rear or something, to optimize efficiency or whatever. Yeah. So I think this is pretty interesting stuff. Yeah, and I don't know, I can't stop thinking about. Well, I think now I kind of calm down, but yeah, for now. But yeah, so I don't know what you guys think. I mean, is this plausible, my theory? 6:1 gear ratio and all that, a single gearbox on Roadster, or do you still think that it needs a 2-speed gearbox, or I don't know, some other magic to make it work? Yeah. All right. I think that's it. Semi-technical stuff. I hope you guys enjoyed it. So, by the way, if you guys wonder, I'm still at 72% on the Roadster. So, yeah, it's been standing still for a long time now. So, we still don't know whether we can afford to get it or not. If we can afford it, yes, that would be great. If not, then yeah, at least, I mean, either way, we are going to buy. I mean, someone will buy it. Either we will buy it or someone else will buy it for the discount, of course, and then we take out the discount and, I don't know, invest in the house or something, or in Tesla stocks, yeah, or in bitcoins, yeah, bitcoins. That's what we should do. Buy bitcoins, yeah. That is Elon's invention. Well, I don't know. It's not. Yeah. All right, so that's it for now then. Thank you guys for watching. All right, bye bye.